Spoiler warning for the entirety of Xenoblade Chronicles 2. When I was planning this first episode of this new series called XenoSpectives, I was like, there is no way there's anything that significant to mention in the first two cutscenes of Xenoblade 2, but man, the amount of symbolism in the second cutscene alone is actually pretty insane, because if you pay attention, you'll realize the writers not only foreshadowed major plot points, but basically spoiled one without you even noticing. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's start with the opening of the first cutscene that surprisingly has a fair amount of symbolism itself. In fact, we can't even get past the first shot without it. The screen fades from black to a stormy sea of clouds without even a glint of sunshine in sight, and it appears to be unending. But just after the music starts to play, the camera starts searching for that bit of shining light through the clouds. The stormy sea of clouds represents the dire situation the world of Arrest is currently in, and the camera is searching for hope. And as the music crescendos, we are greeted with a fade from that small bit of light to a bright, sun-filled day, representing that the hope of Arrest lies in this boy we are about to meet. Pretty neat, huh? Now, notice I said boy. Rex being a boy is integral to the entire story of Xenoblade 2, and we'll see this come up again, so keep a mental note of that. But it doesn't stop there, because speaking of the hope of Arrest, the camera eventually finds our hero, who is approaching the very bottom of this sea of clouds, which I believe symbolizes the fact that he's got a long ways to go before reaching his eventual goal of climbing to the top of the world tree. We can't even completely see him since he's in his gear, which symbolizes his eventual transformation from an ordinary salvager to the hero of Arrest as he rises up to Gramps' back from the bottom of the cloud sea. That's right, we're drawing some far-reaching conclusions. Speaking of, it's time to make you all probably hate me, because we don't even get past the first two lines of dialogue without some controversy. The first words that come out of Rex's mouth are,
"We really do need to buy ourselves a new depth probe. The ping was off by 150 peds to the east. That's not gonna fly."
Gramps responds,
"And what about the treasure, Rex? Was it in line with your expectations?"
"Really, Gramps?" I find it really interesting how Gramps completely dodges the statement about Rex's needs and is like, yeah, sure. What about that treasure though? Before I go any further, I want to iterate that I am 100% aware that this is just back and forth banter that is far more interesting and less redundant than Gramps responding with, "Okay, Rex, we'll make that our next priority," or something like that. But this is a show about looking at things from different perspectives. They don't necessarily have to be true in order to explore them. I mean, for all we know, Rex could have been bugging the crap out of Gramps about this, and Gramps is like, "Alright Rex, let's focus here." Anyway, I digress. The really interesting thing about the conversation at hand is that right after Rex is like,
"We should be able to turn a decent profit,"
Gramps is like,
"Honestly, it takes you 2 days to run a structural analysis, yet somehow you can gauge the profits in an instant."
"I'll do you one better, Gramps. Then why'd you ask about the treasure?" Now, when Gramps said treasure, he could have been referring to the amount or quantity Rex got and not necessarily the monetary value, and he was frustrated that Rex interpreted it that way. I also understand that this is meant to show that Rex is focused on money at this point, which is actually flipped on its head when we find out what he uses some of that money for, but it still gets you thinking. Even if I am reading too much into all of this, which is probably the case seeing as Gramps genuinely cares for Rex and his well-being, as we'll see many times later on, looking at this dialogue in this way at least gives us the premise for one of the main themes behind this story, and that's that adults don't always know what's best. Rex, as reckless and stubborn as he can be, makes a lot of adult decisions for himself that end up turning out to be pretty good. Well, in the end at least. Anyway, when Rex finally gets the crate open and finds a hostile crust dip, we immediately get to see his optimism shine through. Instead of being upset that he didn't find a mountain of treasure or even any leads to Elysium, he views what should have been seen as a frustrating obstacle simply as their lunch. This is something that I personally can't really relate to, as I have a hard time seeing anything that obstructs my goals as a positive thing. I mean, that crate could have had a lot more value in it if that crust tip wasn't living there, yet Rex took advantage of the opportunity to make it something worth their while. As promised, this next scene is where things get crazy with symbolism. In it, we get our chapter title, Encounters, which is suitable for 2 reasons. Not only do we unexpectedly meet many people for the first time as Rex, but throughout this chapter, the player is also given a set of unexpected occurrences. This scene begins with a monologue from Rex talking about the world of Arrest and the legends of its past, hence the name of the cutscene, and I know I'm probably going to get some flack for this because it sounds ridiculous, but I believe every single shot here is deliberate and the developers wanted to match up Rex's dialogue with appropriate imagery. Let me show you what I mean. As Rex is talking about a horizon of white and a sea of clouds, what do we see? Exactly that. Now, he does mention the world tree, but that, along with the architect and the people of the past that he also mentions, aren't pictured. I believe this is also deliberate though, as if we were shown all of these things, it would not only ruin the story, but we are seeing things from the viewpoint of Rex right now, who doesn't know what the architect or the people of the past look like yet. Another reason is because they, along with the world tree, are supposed to be mysterious concepts to keep you intrigued. Yes, Rex knows what the world tree looks like, but it's not relevant to his character arc yet. Other than being a mysterious thing, we have no idea why it's important to Rex. But back to the scene at hand. Next, we get Rex saying, according to the tales, it was a bountiful land. It being Elysium, of course. But as he says these words, there's a shot of Rex drawing from a water supply. Yes, his water supply is limited, but water is not only what gives us all life, but it often represents abundant life. We then get a front shot of Rex as he says, and the people there held the power to command the heavens themselves. Showing Rex and focusing on his face symbolizes how Rex himself will eventually be able to command the power of the heavens with the conduit and pneuma, as was told to him in the tales. But then Rex mentions the name Elysium, and at that point we immediately get a shot of multiple green plants on Gramps' back, representing not only what Elysium will be like, but also foreshadowing that the true Elysium was literally right here all along. Then Rex talks about being cast out by the architect while he's searching through junk, as someone who's cast out would do. And then as the camera switches to show Rex looking at an item curiously, he says, nobody knows why. The way he looks at this particular piece seems to indicate he's not quite sure what it is, which mirrors the phrase that nobody knows why the architect supposedly kicked them out, but he seems to understand that this piece will at least fetch him a fair price. Then he talks about possible reasons for them being cast out. He suggests maybe they angered their creator, but seems more inclined to believe it was something else entirely, judging by the tone in his voice. At this point, he starts lowering the empty crate back into the Cloud Sea, which could symbolize that the reason for everyone being cast out is indeed something else entirely, and that he can find that answer in the Cloud Sea as he believes. But then as he stores the piece he found earlier, he says, all we know is we were forced to leave Elysium and live here in Allrest. He's going about his day-to-day routine of collecting pieces of scrap to sell and accepting the fact that this is how things are because that's all he can do. He continues with, where it turns out, life is pretty hard. Just as he opens the roof to his housing structure and the harsh rays of the sun shine on his face. Then when he talks about how the architect had pity on them when it seemed like they would all surely die out, the shot switches to Gramps, the only Titan we know at the moment. He finishes with, but those Titans are starting to die out, which we see in just a second, but first comes a bit of dialogue between Rex and Gramps emphasizing how old Gramps really is, even though he is a small Titan, since we really have no idea of the lifespan of Titans at this point. This not only serves as foreshadowing, but it also most likely communicates to the player how serious this issue of old dying Titans really is. This is of course backed up by the next shot of a Titan dying. Except it does far more than just solidify how much of a predicament Allrest is in right now. It actually also serves to further the character of Rex. If you notice, Rex only just started eating, or more accurately started shoving food close to his face and chewing the air. Anyway, what's important here is that Rex stops eating, which normally wouldn't be a big deal until you realize he probably hasn't eaten for a while. Yet still, he stops to get up when he hears the Titan dying and goes over to watch it, proclaiming, "Not another one." At first you might be thinking, well, it's because it's something out of the ordinary and it's interesting to watch, so of course he'd stop eating to get up. But if that was the case, Rex wouldn't have also said, "Been happening a lot lately," with Gramps responding, "More so than before." The writers could have had Rex simply turn his head and keep eating as he said that, and it would have been much easier to animate that as well. But instead they went through the extra effort to show us that Rex cares. He's seen this multiple times, yet him taking the effort to walk over there signifies that he wants so badly to do something about it, but he knows he can't. Yes, the fact that he cares is shown plainly by his words in his next sentence, but actions speak louder than words. Speaking of his next sentence, Rex asks if anyone was living on that Titan, to which Gramps responds, "Probably not." Rex then says,
Makes sense.
normal response, right? Yeah, but Al Weaver did a really good job at communicating the amount of sadness in his voice as he said that. Even if people weren't on the Titan itself still died. Plus, as Rex mentions in a later scene, he's even concerned for the animals that were still likely living there. This sadness is of course also directed toward the idea of his home, Fonsett Village, and even Gramps himself eventually dying, because he literally asks Gramps about this next. However, it all leads him to a conclusion that he's come to before. The conclusion that eventually there will be nowhere left to live and a solution needs to be found. That solution is Elysium, which as far as Rex is concerned, lies atop the world tree. What's interesting about all of this is that even though Gramps could have shut Rex down and been like, nah dude, that's fairy tale crap, he didn't. He entertains the idea that this Elysium could indeed be a real thing. But we could also look at it from the perspective of Gramps only believing in this possibility because he's lived through so much, including the very Aegis War itself. Otherwise, he may have indeed shut Rex down. On top of that, Gramps could be entertaining this as a possibility only in theory, but not in action. Something we'll explore in a later episode of XenoSpectives. Anyway, back to the scene. I think Rex is driven not only by the fact that living space is running out, but also by sheer curiosity, the simple curiosity of a child. This is seen not only in the fact that he asks Gramps questions, but he also wonders aloud what the architect is thinking. And I think this curiosity is what continues to drive not only Rex, but eventually his crew as well. He not only eventually wants to get Pyra to Elysium and find living space for everyone, but he and, well, really everyone, are all so dead set on meeting the architect to ask him why things are the way they are. Curiosity. It's what drives them further even when they don't immediately get the answers they're looking for when they reach the top of the world tree. They want answers that only the architect can give. Lastly, we fade to a wide shot of Gramps again. Then we get a shot of Rex literally slapping his face with both hands as he says,
All right, back to making money.
Of course, Rex needs to do this to survive, but it's interesting that he quite literally slaps himself out of this whole idea of helping Allrest as if there's nothing he can do about it right now. And maybe there isn't, but the point is that this is very relatable. The moment we start drifting toward our hopes and dreams within our minds and actually start to do something about it, we think, that'll never happen. We're just in
Fantasyland.
The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, that's all I'm saying. But then we, or someone else, slap ourselves out of that idea of achieving our dreams. That or reality does it for us. Of course, we know that Rex's desire for money, which isn't all bad as we'll see later on, is what leads him down the path destiny has in store for him. The next shot gives us Gramps complaining that it's getting too close to his bedtime and that he doesn't want to take Rex to Argentum to sell his goods, despite the fact that Rex was just eating lunch, which kind of signifies it's still early in the afternoon. Yeah, you could side with Gramps here and be like, the old man is tired, respect your elders, and while that's great, yeah, Gramps is definitely just being lazy and needs to get over himself. That's right, this is the very first episode of XenoSpectives, a brand new series where I take a look at many different perspectives of every single cutscene from the Xeno series, starting with my favorite, Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Tune in next time where we take a look at good old Rex dodging red flags like the plague, and as always, thanks for watching till the end.